Hey, it's Jared, and this is day two of the music conference. And today it's been kind of a crazy day. A lot of good seminars that I've gone to, and a lot of things to share with you. So here we go. Yes. All right, this one's a winner. We're geared up, ready to go. Well, day two was a great success, and I went to a bunch of really great sessions and have a lot of things that I think I can share with you about my experience and kind of some of the things that I took away from day two. I went to several really good sessions for day two of TMEA, and two of the best, of course, were I went to a pedagogical sequencing session for student success, and I guess the main takeaway from that was this idea. The speaker talked about what he called learning burst, and essentially this is just the idea that students learn best when they learn in small chunks, small amounts of time, very specific. So he said 3 to 5 learning units. So 3 to 5 concepts or bullet points or songs or whatever that is. And that it really should last no longer than 2 hours, whatever that learning period is. So this is perfect for the current school model, but even after the first hour of activity, of solid learning, the attention rate drops off dramatically. And after the 2-hour point, it's practically gone. There's nothing left as far as attention is concerned for student learning success. And so I think I can take that back to my own ensemble, my church ensemble, and I think we can reduce, because sometimes we go into a rehearsal and I've planned 7 pieces, and we don't necessarily have to do pieces that far out. So I plan rehearsals for about 2 to 2.5 months out from when the anthem needs to be performed. So that's when we start incorporating it into the rehearsal. But I could potentially, I'm going to try and implement this idea of learning burst and reduce the amount of pieces that we learn on a Wednesday to about, I think I'm going to try to never go beyond 5. I'm going to try it out for a while, for a couple months, and see how successful that becomes. And so I guess we'll find out. So learning burst, that was really interesting. It was a pedagogical sequencing for student success. It just means it was a class on learning how to teach class, in what order, right? What order to teach things. So it was pretty interesting. And I went to a couple other ones there, and I heard about a couple of other ones that I can share with you. And one was on different learning things that happen, disorders and the like. It was interesting to note that they talked about how I think it was Asperger's, which we have commonly thought of as a, well, I don't know what it's classified in the school system, because I'm not part of that world, but my understanding is that it usually is classified as a learning, a special needs kind of learning deal. But now they were saying in the session that the DSM-5, which is the most up-to-date version diagnostic manual for that profession, the people who actually do the diagnosing, it's now rebranded or relisted as not part of that spectrum anymore. It's actually part of the emotional disturbance spectrum, and so it seems like that might have an effect on how we view people who suffer from this, and to deal with that on a daily basis. But it also, I think, speaks toward how the landscape of that area continually changes. How what we understand today might change over time. And so there's that. They also talked about in that session about ADHD, attention deficit disorder, ADHD, attention deficit hyperactive disorder. There you go, ADHD. And they talked about students with ADHD and dealing with how to keep them engaged and how not to let the energy kind of influence the environment that the classroom is in, and actually how to refocus or to guide those energies in a productive way. And so that was really neat, being a person who went all through grade school on the other side of that issue, on being the kid who needed to be redirected. It was really neat to hear somebody talk to that. There was a real focus on keeping things fun, keeping things moving, and I think what we talked about in the earlier session that I went to, the pedagogical sequencing, learning in bursts, I think that's applicable here as well. In order to keep things moving, we got to keep it small, we got to keep it quick. And using those small bursts to keep those ADHD kids engaged, hey, I think that's a great idea. Keep it fun, keep it light, and not get mad at those kids when they're acting impulsively, but trying to redirect those energies into something more productive. So just keep it moving, and I think that was the main topic, or the main idea that came across in that session. So that was really neat. One of the most important and most beneficial sessions that I went to was led by Donald Neuen. I think he's over at UCLA. This session in particular was about English diction, how to get across your meaning in English most effectively, the best way of communicating English texts. So that was a really special session, and I'd just like to share with you a couple takeaways there. He had a lot of things that he said that I wrote down. I was writing furiously, and just all the quotes that he had, and I'm going to see if I can't try and consolidate this into something that you can use. But one of those quotes that he kept coming back to is this quote: "If you're going to do something that has the potential to change lives, you do it in a way they can understand." Now, this is specifically about English diction and text, being able to communicate things effectively. And if you're going to do something special, something awesome, you're performing a piece of music that has awesome beauty and has the potential to change lives because of the text, because of the meaning, because of the history, whatever that case is. If you are doing something that has that kind of potential, you need to do it in a way that is articulate, that gets the point across, and that is emotive. And so all of this session was kind of focused on that idea of trying to get your point across with English text versions of things. And this could include, Brahms, Beethoven, Bach, things that aren't originally in the English language but are translations. He was talking to that effect also, that if you're going to do something that is really super powerful and it's not in English, and you have chosen to do the English language version because of its power and because your audience is English speakers, then you really need to go all in. You really need to have your ducks in a row to be able to convey the meaning of that text. Something else he continued to come back to over and over again was this idea, and I have it written down here, but I can't find it in my notes, so I'll paraphrase. You are the only teacher that these people are ever going to have. Now that's an interesting concept. Normally, when you have students or adults or whatever your ensemble is made up of, when you have people in that ensemble, they have some kind of history, usually. They've got some kind of history coming in. They had a teacher before, a music teacher of some kind, and they're probably going to have a teacher after. But that's not what he said. He said, you are the only. Now, what I think he meant by that, and is this idea that you can't count on that. Middle school teachers, and I talked to my wife about this, how many times have you had a student come in and they stay for 1 year and they don't go on to do anything else in music? They were just there for that 1 year, 7th grade or whatever it was, and they were in your charge for that 1 year, for those 12 months or 8 months or whatever it was, and then they moved on to something else. The only exposure they've had to a music ensemble, a music group, music learning, was your teaching, what you did. What he was trying to convey was that idea, that you never know who those students are going to be. You never know what students are coming in with. You can't bank on them having prior exposure, and you absolutely cannot bank on them having future exposure. You have to assume that you're it. You are the only thing that they're ever going to get, so you have to do it right. He also talked a little bit about what he called the 5 most important rules of English diction. And of course, one of those rules was, I'll just rattle them off. Here we go. The first one was vowel articulation. This means that every time you have a vowel that starts a word, you need to be able to make it articulate. You need to add a glottal stroke to that. Now, some people are opposed to the idea of glottal strokes on vowels for the first sound that happens in a word. He gave the example, I always am. So each one of those, I always am, they all have a little bit of a glottal stroke on them. And what happens, I guess, voice coaches like to say is that sometimes this is damaging or whatever, but really what he said is it doesn't have to be a hard attack. You're not having to really force it, but it needs to be there in order for the text to be understood. The second rule that he talked about was final D consonants and other final consonants like the letter D or the sound that it makes, and really using those to your advantage. He talked about how the choir doesn't have the benefit of the extended instruments that some of these other ensembles have, especially percussion. We don't have anything that drives, we don't have anything that supports us underneath. All we've got is consonants. And so we have to be very intentional about using those consonants to move the music along, to keep rhythm, things of that nature. Final consonants are one of the most important aspects of that kind of percussive nature of choir, and adding some percussive interest, being over-exaggerated for final consonant sounds is going to put you at a level where it is just simply understood in most cases, in most halls. And so he really tried to instill in the people that were at that session this idea that you really need to go harder, faster, stronger than you think is necessary, because that is the only way that you're going to get heard, that you're going to get understood. So that was the second one. Here's the third one. Voicing the TH. He said that the only way you are allowed to do this, and that it is going to be understood over an orchestra or over a band, a brass band or whatever, is if you put your tongue on the outside of your teeth and then forcefully rip it back across the teeth. And that is the only way that the TH sound is going to get heard in a context like a concert. So he had us take our tongue and our teeth and go that, right? He had us put it outside the teeth, even outside the lips, and then pull it back fast, so that we could get the idea of that. And we were singing it on pitch, and that, this, though, and it was really interesting for him to give us feedback as a group, as an ensemble, like an impromptu ensemble, because the first time we did it, it was like not enough, and the second time we did it, it was like now you're understood. And we felt like we were overdoing it. We felt like we were going above and beyond the sound that we were supposed to be making. But that wasn't the case at all. We were just doing the bare minimum. And so I'm going to take that back, and I'm going to go, hey, we need to do more as far as consonant sounds. We've got a really big piano that is our primary accompanying instrument for my performing ensemble. And so just knowing that it's a big instrument, it's loud, we really need to start using those consonant sounds. So we talked about the second rule, which is the final consonants, to add percussive elements, but especially the initial TH, and anytime that happens within a word, we need to be very intentional about making that as explosive as possible. That was the third one. Here's the fourth one. W versus WH. Now he talked about the difference between the W sound, which is W, and the WH sound, which absolutely every time needs to be differentiated because it has this air that passes through. Which, why, what. There's air. That's what the H is. It is the softening. It is, and we need to do that when we're performing the two words so that they're understood. And here's number 5, diphthongs. This is when there are two sounds that happen, like the words thy. Those are two vowel sounds that happen right back to back. Thy, I. So the E happens at the very end. The ah vowel, the first vowel sound, gets extended. The last one has to be there, but it's quick, it's percussive, just like those final consonant sounds. He also did the word thou, wa. There's a little bit of that's where the closure happens. It has to be quick, and it has to be there. He also gave particular emphasis on the word O-U-R, spelled O-U-R. It's a triphthong. Our. There's three. Our, right? There's three sounds that happen right back to back, and they each need to be articulated in order to be differentiated between the word our and the word are, which is what most choirs, he said, do. Those two words, A-R-E and O-U-R, sound the exact same, but they mean completely different things, and they have to sound different in order to be understood. He also talked about some other things like syllable inflection, which means each syllable has to get its own emphasis, and it has to be different than the ones around it. It has to have different levels within a dynamic level. And he also talked about word inflection, which is you've got your syllables, and then you've got your words. So each syllable has its own inflection, its own dynamic level and emphasis. But then words next to each other have to have their own inflection, their own emphasis. And so words either have to be going somewhere or leaving somewhere. They have to be doing something. And anything that's connected, that's conjoined, that's touching in a piece of music for English diction, and really, I imagine, any language, needs to have purposeful direction. And so that's kind of what he was talking about. But that was at the very tail end, and what we really spent the most time on were those 5 rules of English diction. Some of those lessons that he instilled in the people who showed up to that net clinic were the things like, you're going to be the only teacher these people ever get, and so you need to do it right, which means you never learn anything on their time. You only learn your stuff on your time. You do it before. You set up the room before. You put the work in before. And I've been pretty good about that. Of course, there have been moments, days where I show up and I went, oh, I am having a hard time singing that bass line or whatever, individual voice parts. And so I was challenged and encouraged to make sure that I'm being intentional about, and it's just a refresher, and it was a good one, to be intentional about learning everything that I need to do, my part, outside of rehearsal, and that I'm never doing any learning on their time. I'm being respectful of the people who have come to do this thing called rehearsal, called practice. And so it was a really great day. Afterwards, we were able to go out to dinner, my wife and I, and we were able to share some of the things that we learned. And so it was really a neat day. Took a lot away from it, but probably the most I took away was from that session with Donald Neuen. So really neat day, and I'm so excited about what day 3 has in store. As always, if you enjoyed this content, please hit the like button and subscribe to this channel for more stuff just like this. This is day 2 complete of TMEA, and we'll see you next time. Go in peace.